What's going on, everyone? Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks and Game Time. Today, I'm super excited. This is a show that I've been waiting for a little while, and it's finally happening. We have one of the brightest and most insightful minds in the industry, someone I've had a lot of respect for a long time. Trevor Sikkema, lead draft analyst for PFF and co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us, man. How you doing?
Taylor, I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you having me on the show. The feeling is very mutual. I'm excited to talk a little bit of football here, some Patriots football here with you, man. This is going to be fun.
Absolutely, brother. So you co-host the NFL Stock Exchange with friend of the show, Connor Rogers. You guys did a great job breaking down how the Patriots could fix their team, which was much needed, pretty obvious, well before the end of the season. And now we're actually at the point where we know what's been going on. So a big chunk of the show was about Bill Belichick and what his future might be. Fast forward a few months, now we know. We have Jerod Mayo as head coach. We have Elliot Wolf as not general manager, but vice president of player personnel. And obviously Alex Van Pelt as well, offensive coordinator, really the big head honchos in this rebuild. So we're really looking at the state of the Patriots, going through all the different important areas and seeing really what your perspective is compared to where you were when you were talking about fixing the Pats. So what do you think about this coaching staff and front office and the changes they've made since the Bill Belichick era?
I mean, it's such a super interesting offseason, and there was going to be no good way to move on from the greatest head coach of all time, right? I mean, like, just if you wanted to do that, how are you going to part ways? Because it felt like Bill didn't want to give it up, right? And so it was like, man, feels like everything else is kind of pointing in the direction of they want to move in a different spot, but what do you do with him there? And then that made it tricky, right? Because for the longest time we've talked about Bill has always been certainly a great coaching mind, but as a team builder, he's always kind of been zigging when other teams were zagging, and like sometimes it worked and sometimes it was absolutely terrible. But it's like now the Patriots had this roster where it had been 2 straight decades of Belichick's handprints all over it. In fact, every spot, starter, depth players, the guys in reserve, the farm system, the practice squad, like it's all been Belichick. There's been no holdover or anything like that. And it made for an interesting discussion when we were talking about rebuilding the Patriots, because it's like, okay, if you move on from Belichick, there's not a lot of other head coaching candidates. They're going to be able to look at this roster and be like, yeah, okay, this is similar to what I do, because he was so unique in how he built that roster. Now, obviously, the uniqueness turned into be more of a negative than his coaching was a positive at the end. That's why you move on from him. But that's ultimately what makes the current coaching staff so fascinating to me, because Jerod Mayo, he's a new voice in the building, but obviously he's a Belichick disciple. He played for the Patriots for a long time. He was linebackers coach for a while, but it always felt like the voices from within the building were like, yeah, this guy's next. Like, this guy's next in line. Whenever it's not going to be Bill, it's going to be Jerod. So they bring him in. Obviously, they have a ton of confidence there. Elliot Wolf kind of the same way. Like, you wondered how much they were going to steer away from the Belichick way. And maybe it is going to be very different. But the more I thought about what the Patriots did here, it almost really does feel like that best case scenario. Because if you brought in another head coach, chances are they weren't going to know what to do with this roster. Chances are, like, the Patriots were going to be in the cellar for years as they tried to rebuild this thing to maybe whatever that new head coach was going to want. But now you have Mayo, who it's like, okay, this guy's been in the building. He understands the Belichick way, both as a player and as a coach. He knows what the organization is going to want, and it's a lot of Belichick disciples, but I think Belichick himself not being there, it frees them to maybe go in a much more progressive direction than it felt like they were going before. So when they hired Jerod Mayo initially, I was like, God, is this just going to be Bill Belichick's system without the mastermind to like coach it? And the more I thought about it, it was like, no, I actually could see this really working out, because now it is somebody who is at least familiar with a very unique roster and a very unique roster setup. And instead, but because it's not Belichick, it allows you to kind of spread your wings a little bit, maybe get outside of the Belichick way a little bit, have a little bit of flexibility with how you're building this roster for how the league is going. So to me, the more I thought about it, the more I actually liked what they did. And of course, this roster is still building. We saw last year they were deficient in a lot of areas. I know we'll talk about that. But in terms of who they have and the decision they made, I actually like it because it's a nice little transition from Belichick into whatever is next.
For sure. And the caveat that we always have to throw out there is that there's a lot we still have to learn. Like Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo always say that we haven't really gone through anything yet. We're still in the honeymoon phase.
Right.
But at the same time, if you get somebody where the Patriots defense wasn't doing anything wrong, like they were the only reason this team was competitive. So you get really one of the more prominent people on that side of the ball, the co-defensive coordinator, also not just any Bill Belichick disciple in terms of players, but someone who was a captain, the guy they called Baby Belichick, where he's the one going upstairs and saying, hey, Bill, like these guys aren't trying to run today and XYZ, where he really has that unique perspective of how the players felt about what Bill Belichick was doing, but also someone who saw the success that Bill had and understands, you know what, sometimes you got to do it the hard way, but we can definitely pull back on some things. So I agree. I'm really excited about the Gerard Mayo era. A lot we still have to learn, but I feel like he was the perfect pick. And in terms of Elliott Wolf, before we really get into how they started to reshape this roster in different ways, how do you feel about his approach? Because I know you were talking about all the different moves the Patriots could make out of house with all the cap space they had. Lo and behold, they spent a lot of that money, but it was mostly on guys who were already on the team. And then they more just kind of filled holes with the other guys. I think Antonio Gibson was really the one kind of, if you want to call it splash signing, a guy where it's like, okay,
right.
He something different and fresh, but other guys that really felt like more, bridge players or guys who were really just serving a role rather than revolutionizing anything. So how do you think Elliott Wolf did with the guys that he retained and the guys maybe he didn't get?
Yeah, I think that sometimes you look at situations where, when it's not going great, when you totally clean house, when it's a new general manager and new head coach, fans can go into the offseason like, okay, what are you going to do here? Let's see you spend all the money in the world. Like, let's see you get super aggressive. And that's not always the best way to do it. And so, even though it was a little bit more, it was a quiet offseason from them when it came to the veteran market, I don't really hate what they did because I actually like the building blocks that they have. The more I thought about it, and I know we're going to get into the roster here, they do have a lot of cornerstone types of players. Now, like the rest of the concrete isn't poured yet, but to me, like the foundation is there. Like Christian Barmore is fantastic on the defensive line. Kyle Duggar is fantastic as a second level defender. Jabril Peppers played well last year. I think that Christian Gonzalez is a true CB1 type of a player in this league. So now you look at the defense, you mentioned the defense wasn't the problem, but you go, okay, maybe if we want to change some things here and there, that's fine. But you got a cornerstone at the first level, the second level, and in the secondary. Now you go over to the offensive side of things. Yeah, offensive line needs to get revamped. They need some new talent in a lot of different areas. They need a lot more talent at receiver. There's no doubt about it. But you drafted the quarterback, right? Like that was the key. That's what you needed. You had to lay the foundation. And there's some of a debate of, hey, what do you want first? Do you want to establish the team first, or do you want to go get the franchise quarterback first? The answer to that question is whichever timeline allows you to get the franchise quarterback. I don't care if you pick him early or if you pick him late. To me, it doesn't matter as long as you pick him. And to me, I love Drake May in this past draft class. He was a number 3 overall player for me. He was the second quarterback, second only to Caleb Williams. I thought he was an excellent choice by them. And to get back to the Elliott Wolf part of your question, I loved what they did because they have the opportunity to take a really talented franchise caliber type of talent at number 3 overall when they had a king's ransom to trade back. I'm sure multiple teams offered them, the Giants, the Vikings. Those are a couple teams that we heard from, but there are these deals that maybe you don't even hear about until maybe years later. I bet the Patriots got called by every single team that still wanted to go get a quarterback. And it must have been really tempting for them because you were talking about multiple first-round picks for a team that is not there yet. But they had the chance to take the quarterback. And to me, Drake May is worth it. I love his mindset in saying, no. We're not going to get cute here. We have the opportunity to take a guy that could change the franchise for us. And that, even though we didn't see a lot of evidence to maybe what exactly they're going to do from the veteran perspective, to me, that showed a priority that I really like in how he is approaching this team building with that quarterback position at number 3 overall.
Completely agree. I was sweating leading up to the draft because I'm thinking, you had the rumors that Kevin O'Connell really wants Drake May. Brian Daboll really wants Drake May. They're going to offer whatever you want to get him. And I'm thinking those guys evaluate quarterbacks pretty well. If they are desperate to get someone and you need a quarterback,
right,
you would probably stay put. And the fact that Elliott Wolf said, you know what, we knew for a while that Drake May was our guy. And like you said, they didn't get cute. That for me said a lot because I feel like in Belichick's day, even Gerard Mayo said we might have taken the picks in the past. We would have tried to go for the king's ransom and not just gone for that one player. And because Drake is such a transformative presence, if he reaches his peaks, I really think, hey, if you get fired because you invested in Drake May, that's okay. I don't really think you can say, hey, I made a mistake. You took a big swing, and now we see what they're going to do with it. Speaking of Drake May, now not just Drake May, but I feel like we also want to tie Alex Van Pelt into this as well, because we don't know exactly what his system's going to look like. This is a guy who's been in the league for a long time as a player, as a coach, had a lot of different stops, diverse background. When it comes to the development of quarterbacks, we've seen that he could, take some average quarterbacks and get some pretty good play out of them. Last year, 5 different quarterbacks, they still make it to the playoffs. Now he has a guy in Jacoby Brissett, who could very well, I think, be the Patriots starter all season if they really wanted to. And maybe if they said, hey, maybe Drake May's not ready. I think Jacoby Brissett is maybe a top 20-ish guy who can definitely help you win games. You're not winning because of him, but he can help you win games. Or you can have Drake May just blow the roof off this summer, and then you turn into a team that I think is really competitive and can kind of make a push for the playoffs. So what do you think about the Patriots quarterback situation as it stands right now? We can even throw Joe Milton into that mix as well.
Yeah, and look, I think that Jacoby, when it comes to bridge quarterbacks, is about as good as you can get, right? Because he's got starting experience in this league. He's somebody that you have no worries about, is the game going to overwhelm him if we put him out there in week 1? And I think Jacoby's at the point in his career, too, where there might be some quarterbacks that might really be bothered by, Kirk Cousins is the example, right? Like you sign Kirk Cousins, they draft Michael Penix Jr., and all of a sudden it's like, oh, is Kirk going to be able to mentally handle it? Is he pissed off about it? Things like that. Like Jacoby, I think, understands where he is at his career in this point. And that's not to downplay the pride that he has in his game and how competitive he is, but it's also, I mean that more as a compliment. Like, okay, my team just drafted a number 3 overall quarterback. I'm going to still go out and put my best foot forward. And until that quarterback is better than me in practice, I'm going to make their job really, really difficult. And if they go with this guy over me before he's ready, well, you're going to pay the price for it. So to me, I think Jacoby's going to have a really good mindset about it. I think they're going to be very comfortable leaning on him if they need to. To me, the journey that Jacoby has been on throughout the league over the last couple of years, it pairs well to where Alex Van Pelt has been, right? I think Van Pelt was at the Packers. He was at the Bengals. He was with the Cleveland Browns, right? And so he's got a lot of diverse experience working with a lot of different quarterbacks in a lot of different ways. And I think if he is working with Jacoby Brissett to kind of set up what the best version of the Patriots offense is going to be right out of the gate, I think those two guys can conjure a lot of their experience together and kind of take little pieces from where they've been and formulate a pretty dang good offense. Now, of course, that's only one part of Van Pelt's job, because a major part of it is developing Drake May, right? That's why you are hired as the offensive coordinator. They draft him number 3 overall for him to eventually be the starter. So yes, you want to be really good out of the gate. And if it's Jacoby, you want to put a good offense in front of him, but behind the scenes, you also want to be working with Drake. And, Drake is somebody who I just saw all the tools to work with over the last couple of years. It's funny. I don't mean to say this in any slight to Jaden Daniels, who had an unbelievable 2023 season. Obviously, he has a Heisman Trophy in his trophy case because of it. But I can't help but think, if you were to swap the 2022 season and the 2023 season that Drake May had, the same exact seasons, don't change anything. If you just swap where they happen, I don't even know if QB2 is a debate. I don't know if Washington takes Jaden Daniels over Drake May, even with the season that Jaden had. But it was because Drake was better, I would say more efficient in his first season as a starter. And then it was a little bit less efficiency, a little bit more accuracy concerns this past year, where people are like, I don't know. But look, I think timing of it goes into a lot of things with Drake. And I say all that to say, I think that a lot of his issues are completely fixable. And for Alex Van Pelt, he's seen a lot of different quarterbacks. He understands a lot of different throwing motions and setups and what makes guys comfortable. I think that he'll be able to find out what Drake May is comfortable with as well.
100%. With Drake May, I feel like he fell in that kind of category once it seemed like they just got draft fatigue. Or it's like, yeah, this guy's super talented, but, I feel like turnovers came up a lot in processing. And I'm thinking, was he perfect? Absolutely not. But I didn't watch him think, the bad mistakes were so bad that they burned themselves in your brain. And I understand that. But he had one of the lowest turnover-worthy play rates in the entire country. And when you see the things he was doing as a 2-year starter, as a 21-year-old, the way that he attacked defenses, where he's not throwing blindly into coverage, he's attacking leverage. He understands where vulnerabilities are in coverage. I'm thinking this is a guy where once, mechanically, I feel like he's lined up and he sees more defense. By the end of his rookie deal, I think we're talking about a guy who's top 10, potentially top 5 quarterback. if you do groom him the right way. So what do you think it's going to take for Drake May to get to the point where he is the starter? And what do you think, in your opinion, his ceiling could potentially be?
Yeah, I think that his ceiling is certainly a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. You know, we talk about top 5 and sure, I think that he is immensely talented, but man, you talk about the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. I mean, these dudes are just,
it is lofty.
Dude, it's nuts. I mean, Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and Jackson and just, what they're able to do is just, it's crazy. So, but I think that Drake has the potential to put himself at least in that conversation. And anytime you even have that sort of potential, to me, again, going back to the number 3 overall pick, you don't move off of it. So, you know, for May, I think I agree with you. Draft fatigue, I believe, went into it. But I also kind of look at his mistakes and some of the accuracy issues that we saw specifically in 2023. And there are times when, like, he just misses. Like, the ball just did not go where it was supposed to go. And I think that's the frustrating part for people is sometimes the footwork was fine. Sometimes the read was fine. Sometimes he just didn't put the ball where it needed to go. And when there's not a concrete, oh, see, boom, the footwork right there. Or when there's not like, oh, see, we fixed the release, we fixed the player. Like, when there's not a concrete thing, sometimes that's even more damaging, even if you see less reps that are negatives, because you just go like, well, I mean, just does he have accuracy issues? Can we really fix this? And, you know, I just don't believe that's the case with May, because we saw an even more efficient, more accurate player from him in 2022. So why would you think that just because you saw 2023, and like you mentioned, no quarterback is perfect, why would you think that, oh, now we got to discount 2022 as if 2022 didn't happen? So look, you fix the footwork a little bit with him. An issue that I sort of had with Drake May is you can tell that he's a good athlete, right? I mean, like, his brothers were all great athletes, you know, like all ACC baseball players, you know, basketball players, like his whole family is just super athletic. So you can tell that Drake, who is a good athlete himself, was basically the best player on the field all throughout his high school journey. I mean, when he got to UNC, he had the 2020 season. He's lighting the world on fire. So his footwork sometimes is reminiscent of a guy who's like, okay, I'm going to go through my first and second read, but I'm also good enough of an athlete to where I can pick up yards with my legs. I'm never going to have to take a negative down. I'm never going to have to throw the ball away. Never going to have to take a sack. And not that he didn't throw the ball away, but going back to the footwork, I think it goes to his play style in he will scan the field. He will look at a first read, and let's say he gets to a second read and maybe the timing's not quite there for him. He'll sort of like take off, but then he'll go, oh no, wait, like I can still throw this. And like, he'll try to still make it happen. And it's that almost that confidence in his mobility that sometimes leads to his footwork being a little bit wonky. Whereas if he told himself, I don't leave the pocket, I think you would see pretty dang good footwork from him. Because on a play-by-play basis, I think he has pretty good footwork. But that's something that I think you need to kind of make a little bit better, a little bit more consistent, teach him what he can and can't get away with at the NFL level, because he's got the arm to really attempt some fantastic throws. But in this league, if you don't understand the speed and you don't anticipate well enough, well, that's where you can get in trouble as well. So it goes back to kind of what you said a couple minutes ago, where you said, hey, Jacoby's good enough to start this entire season. And I actually agree with you. Jacoby is good enough to start this entire season. But I think once you get past week 10, I think that it's going to become clear that the team's not going to make the postseason. And at that point, at least the last 6-7 games of the year, I think you give to Drake and at least let him figure out, hey, let's go through some live bullets of what it's like really going out there against NFL competition. So that's a long way to answer your question of kind of where I think Drake is right now.
I don't think anybody's going to complain about Drake May content. So you are absolutely fine. And you hit the nail on the head when it came to, if he just thought about, I can make the throw, I don't necessarily have to run. I spoke to quarterbacks coach TC McCartney yesterday, and I asked, with the guy who's as talented as Drake May, how do you balance the fact that he can make any throw from any platform? He doesn't necessarily have to be lined up, but also wanting to make sure he is repping and getting the muscle memory down. And he said, there's going to be plenty of opportunities in the NFL to make those kinds of plays. But if number 1 or number 2 is open, you need to hit them. And, anything after that, you're all good. Kind of like that Mahomes thing where Andy Reid's like, hey, for the first 2.5 seconds, the play is mine. Anything after that, you can absolutely go nuts. Now, we are actually going to talk about the people around Drake May and the quarterbacks. But first, a quick word from our friends at Game Time Be right back. The NBA Finals are finally here, and if I have any chance at all to find tickets to a game, it's probably going to be through Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Getting through the Game Time app is super easy, and I really like their user interface. All you have to do is go to the game or event that you want to attend, go through the venue to see where you want to sit relative to the action. Then you can actually get a panoramic view of your seat, so you'll know exactly what to expect once you get your ticket. Game Time is also great for those weekends where you're not really sure what you want to do with your night, because you can just scroll through, look at flash deals, zone deals, or last minute tickets, and find a plan to spend the rest of your day or evening. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Trevor, so we can talk about quarterbacks till we're blue in the face, but they are not the only people on the offensive side of the ball. So when it comes to supporting cast, offensive line, when it comes to protection and run blocking, Arsenal in terms of pass catchers and running backs, how do you feel about the Patriots' ability to support whichever quarterback is out there, whether it be, this is probably going to be a run-heavy team, just given Alex Van Pelt's background. He's a West Coast guy, but he puts a big emphasis on that rushing attack, a lot of diversity and the play action off of that. So you're hoping the scheme can help, but can the run game do enough to open up the playbook? And then when things do get hard, do you think they have the playmakers that can allow these quarterbacks to actually make the plays that are available?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the positives, the biggest positives that I have. And I do like their running backs. I really do. I think Ramondre Stevenson's really nice. I mean, when he is fully healthy, I mean, you look at just his career averages, really nice yards per carry average from him, pretty high PFF rushing grades for him. Yeah, that rookie season, he had, a metric that we like at PFF that can sometimes help tell the tale of taking a back sort of necessarily outside of his offensive line, because it's always a question, right? Like, oh, this guy's getting a ton of yards. Like, is it just the offensive line in front of him? Is it the actual running back? Forced or missed tackles forced per attempt. So that means, how often you are making somebody miss, whether it is a true one cut, making a miss in space, or breaking a tackle, both of those things count. That is an average that we like to track, because that's an individual metric that no matter where a tackler is coming from, whether it's in the backfield because the offensive line didn't do their job, or whether it's at the second level because the offensive line did, those statistics reflect just the running back. And his numbers there are pretty good. At least his rookie year was his best. It was 0.25 missed tackles forced per attempt average, which I think anything between 0.25 and 0.35 is really good. I mean, once you get into 0.4, I mean, you're talking elite levels. Yeah, elite levels of this stuff. So he was right below 0.20 over the last 2 years, but it's still something that I think is well within his wheelhouse to have a healthy number there. Yards after contact as well, I think he has been good with, which is, again, another statistics where it doesn't matter. Again, if the offensive line doesn't do their job and you get hit in the backfield, what's your yards after contact average? If they do their job and you get to the second level before you hit contact for the first time, okay, well then still, what's your yards after contact? So I think he is pretty good there. I also really like the Antonio Gibson signing. I really do. I think Antonio Gibson's a good player. Now, he didn't get a lot of notoriety in Washington this past year because I think everybody felt like Washington was just so apathetic. It was it's very clear that this era is just not going to work in Washington, and people were kind of trying to just simulate the season. It felt like just get to the end of the season and see what 2024 was going to have in store for them. So Gibson, I think that I think he's a good player, certainly is a good receiver. He's got that versatile skill set to him. So I think that's a really nice 1-2 combination for them there. The offensive line, it's been shaky. It's straight up, it needs to be better. I mean, it's a lot of the similar faces, but it's guys that have got to be able to play to a higher potential. I mean, I know that Cole Strange is kind of one of these dudes like Mike Onwenu. I'm glad that they brought back because they really needed him. But Sadie So, obviously David Andrews has been there for a while. Chuck Okorafor, somebody who I think could step up as one of those offensive tackles there. You've got two guys that you drafted in Caden Wallace and Layden Robinson, who if I'm going to be honest, those are the two picks that I thought were the biggest reaches for them. Their offensive line picks, which I wish wasn't the case because I wanted them to draft better offensive linemen. But hey, if they believe in the potential of those guys, hopefully it works out. Then of course, like the receivers, right? Kind of talking about the draft with the receivers as well. Pop Douglas was great last year, obviously leading the team in receiving, but there's no doubt about it. It had to get much better, like from a ceiling perspective. And you bring in a guy like Jalen Polk, who was able to be a major part of a prolific offense last year at Washington. I really liked him as a receiver. My co-host on the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, Connor Rogers, he liked him even more. He was a top 10 receiver for Connor in a really good wide receiver class. And so I think that's a really great get for them. And then Javon Baker as well. Baker is somebody who, I'm sure that your audience knows, or most of your audience might know this already, but former 4-star receiver. I mean, his career started at Alabama. I know people look at like, oh, okay, UCF wide receiver. I mean, he was at Alabama for a little bit before he ends up transferring over to UCF, becomes the guy there. They ran their passing offense through him. And I love his play style. Like, he is such a natural receiver who is so good at so many different parts of the game. I mean, he's got the strength portions. He's got the quickness. He's got, he's not the fastest dude in the world, but he's got enough speed to get vertical for you. He's an ideal flanker off the line of scrimmage type of a guy that you can move in motion before the snap. So to me, I also just love his competitiveness. Every time the ball's in the air and he's going up against a cornerback, like, he's somebody who tries to turn those into, 60, 70 balls in his favor. So I really like these two receivers that they brought on there. I think they can play huge roles for them both as a rookie. And so building block here for the offense, there's no doubt about it. But that's kind of how I see the Patriots team right now.
So kind of like what I asked with Drake May, ceilings for these young receivers, because Javon Baker's someone I've been banging that drum even before the draft. By the time they picked Layden Robinson, they were in the 4th round. I'm like, all right, it's not going to be Javon Baker. Let me just get that thought out of my head. And maybe it was a reverse jinx because they ended up taking him. I was super happy. I feel like he can be, maybe a mid to low end number 1 receiver if he really lives up to that dog mentality and reaches his potential. And Jalen Polk is someone I think could be a really, really good 2, elite 3. So from your perspective, especially getting to grow with Drake May, we've already seen clips where these guys are communicating how they want routes run. Drake saying, you got to come to me because I want to miss outside. Mm-hmm. Having a quarterback who can have that line of communication and really be able to grow up and see how they can make each other better. What do you think the potential is for those young guys? Yeah, I think both Polk and Baker are like high-end wide receiver 2s. I really do. Like, I think that both of these guys are high-end wide receiver 2s at the NFL level. And again, you think about this like a year from now. If a year or 2 from now, whatever it is, because these guys are young, so you can project that far out because Douglas is obviously young as well. Mm-hmm. Douglas, I think, is a really nice, like, low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 type of player. If you add like a true wide receiver 1 to this group, all of a sudden you go, whoa, okay, this is really talented. Like, this whole, I think 2 or 3 years from now, if you have the opportunity to get a stud wide receiver 1 type of a player, the whole rest of this group, you go, this is a really good wide receiver core right now. So this year, obviously, somebody's going to get wide receiver 1 attention. Like, somebody's going to get wide receiver 1 target. So whether it's Baker, whether it's Polk, or maybe it's a little bit of both, maybe you're splitting it a little bit of both between those 2 guys, but they're going to have the volume, I think, is the important part. And if whatever you believe in the ceiling of these players as rookies in the early half of their rookie contract, like, they're going to have the volume to be able to show you that this is what they are. So thankfully, I think that the Patriots are in a situation where those targets are not going to be an issue. It's not like, like, maybe this guy could be more for us, but we don't really know. You're going to figure it out, I think, early in their careers, and specifically this rookie year, because they're going to have the opportunities to do it. So that's, to me, how I see both of those guys. I think, again, they both have that high-end wide receiver 2 potential, but we'll see if it can be more this upcoming season. Yeah, it feels like this is a group that's going to be better than the sum of their parts, where you may not have one superstar, but if everybody can play their role, then I think, especially the young guys, if they can establish themselves, kind of like Drake May, I think you start to push yourself to the point where at first you're a team where no one's really expecting much. Maybe you get a couple more games than people think. But if those young guys can establish themselves, that's where I'm like, okay, maybe you can be a sneaky playoff team. You may not win, but you're maybe on a faster track than people expected earlier. All right, we're going to switch it over to the other side of the ball, talk some defense. But first, quick word from our friends at Prize Picks. Be right back. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. The finals mean more on Prize Picks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars that you won't find anywhere else. When the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball was just getting started. With young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Breonna Taylor and Asia Wilson, you can win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the basketball board, and I'm taking Jaylen Brown's overs on points and rebounds because dude has been absolutely killing it. I'm also going to take Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 3-pointers made and Breonna Stewart for more than 25 points. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, so I have thrown the word playoffs into this conversation a couple of times, and I understand that might sound crazy, but the real reason I think that's even a remote possibility is because of the Patriots defense. As bad as things were last year with the offense and special teams actively shooting this team in the foot, there were only 2 or 3 games where they were truly out of it by the fourth quarter. So one, you got a lot of veteran guys coming back, which the communication can build. They talked about evolving, where you got Peppers and Duggar, as you mentioned, on the back end, one of the best safety combos in the league. John Jones, one of the most consistent cornerbacks in the league. Jelani Tavai, Jawan Bentley, another underrated group. I really like them for what the Patriots like to do, where they got to take on defensive linemen a lot of the time, and even sometimes play on the line of scrimmage. And then obviously Barmore, one of the better defensive tackles in the league, especially for what he's asked to do as more of a 2-gapper, and Devon Gottschall, a really good nose tackle. And if you get some kind of boost from the young guys like Amarte Mapu at safety, Gonzo obviously got hurt, but I feel like the ceiling is really high for them. I think we can agree on that. Maybe even some from Keon White, who the coaching staff has said has taken a step up in year 2, both as a leader on and off the field. What are you expecting from this Patriots defense? And do you think they have enough to, like last season, keep this team in games so that if Jacoby Brissett or Drake may have the ball back at the end of the game, maybe the fate of this team is a little different than, it's projected to be by most.
I mean, that's exactly the hope, right? I mean, like when you have a young quarterback, sometimes we talk about best friends, and the stereotype is a good running game, a tight end, a wide receiver 1, right, or whatever. But sometimes a quarterback's best friend is a great defense behind them because they don't feel like they have to throw for 300, 400 yards in order to win the game. So when you keep things much more manageable, that allows quarterbacks to fail, grow, stay in games, not lose all their confidence, because it's terrible when you have a quarterback who, it's like, especially as a young quarterback, man, they make 1 or 2 mistakes. Like, let's say they throw 2 interceptions in one game, which happens, right? I mean, like, it sometimes happens to the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but the defense is just, yeah, and it's to the point where the defense is so bad that it's like you give the ball away twice, then you as the quarterback, naturally, you face the media afterwards. Everybody wants to hear from you, and you are forced to say, because unfortunately it kind of is true at that point, yeah, it's my fault. Like it's my fault. And instead, you might be in a situation like where, let's say you throw those 2 turnovers, and your defense is still keeping you in the game to the point where maybe you lose by 2 or 3, like a field goal at the very end. Then you could go in front of the media and you could actually tell yourself, be like, hey, I got to be better, but we're right there. And it's almost like a motivating thing. It's the same exact result that the young quarterback may have had, but a defense can sometimes really help their confidence out if they know that they can be in every single game, and you kind of lift them up that way. So I agree with you, man. I mean, when I look at this depth chart, Barmore's an absolute stud. You got some good veterans on this team. Jonathan Jones and Christian Gonzalez should be one of the better 1-2 cornerback duos that we've got in the AFC. I mean, like Duggar and Peppers. I mean, you call them safeties, but Duggar's all over the place. So it's like, yeah, those are 2 guys that played really, really well last year as well. So I think the secondary is strong. The linebacker level is fine. They're gonna need Keon White to step up, because it's got to be more on that defensive line than just Barmore kind of getting into the backfield and really being able to hold the line of scrimmage. And White is somebody who, I remember watching him at Georgia Tech. I'm like, this dude's got some freaky plays. Like, his top 5 plays are just like, what? How is this possible? I mean, the athlete that he is, for the size of a player that he is, I mean, the flexibility, it's all there for him. It was always just going to take a little bit of time. You could see that it was really raw, or that his skill set, and I think his overall production was raw when he was in college, and obviously now at the NFL level, you're hoping that he takes that next step up. So to me, I think the key for this defense is veterans still playing well. I think specifically at the second level, like Matthew Judon, obviously, staying strong, I think is big for them as well. But like Keon's going to be huge for them, in my opinion, because if they can get even one other edge rusher to continually be a force that offensive line has to rotate towards or pay attention to, or he's just at least forcing pressures or the ball out of the quarterback's hands a little bit quicker, then you've got the secondary on the back end to be able to handle it. And that's when you keep that EPA per play, in the top 10, top 5, you're really stepping up in a lot of different areas. So to me, it's huge what this defense is going to be for them. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I think they've got the cornerstones, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to be a really good unit.
And I think Keion White really is, like you said, that key piece where that's going to decide just how far this defense goes. Because we talk about tandem, safety, cornerback, linebacker, defensive tackle. They got good 1-2 punches, but on the edge, you got Matt Judon as that every down guy. You never really need to take him out of the game, assuming he obviously coming off the biceps tear. Then you have Jennings, an elite run stopper, and then Uche, where you're not really sure if he can be the elite pass rusher anymore. But if Keion White can be that type of Judon where they're freak athletes, you do what you want with them, then I feel like this unit really comes together. But obviously, we will see. Trevor, thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate it. This has been a blast. Before I let you go, please let the people know where they can find you and what great stuff you've got coming down the pipeline that we should be looking out for.
Sure. All the Twitter handles, social media handles it's at Tampa Bay Trey. All my written stuff's over at pff.com. And then if anybody out there listening wants to dip their toe in the water for some 2025 NFL draft summer content, head on over to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast with myself and Connor Rogers. We're introducing the good people to what the upcoming quarterback class is going to be. We've already got that episode out right now. We're going to hit running backs and wide receivers and just not only preview the draft, but preview college football and what you're expecting to see. But Taylor, this was a ton of fun, man. I really appreciate you having me on the show. It was a good time. We'll have to do it again soon.
Yes, sir. You are always welcome. Thank you once again. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Now, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see you next time. Peace, y'all.